It's Florida Daily TV, brought to you by FloridaDaily.com. For all your news on politics, business, and education, it's FloridaDaily.com. Now, here's your host, Ed Dean.
Welcome to another edition of Florida Daily TV, right here, brought to you by FloridaDaily.com. I'm your host, publisher, Ed Dean. Another exciting, it's the month of October, so they say business is about to pick up. It's already been picking up. Claire Goforth, political reporter for the Daily.com. Also, you can hear her on NPR radio stations throughout the state. And an old friend, one of my favorites, he does a lot of radio with me, Jamie Miller, one of the best political strategists, but one of the best marketing guys. He's the state director for the website peoplewhothink.com. I want to talk about voter suppression, but I think there's manufactured voter suppression. I want to get to this in a second. I say this not to be disparaging, Jamie, but I mean, you had the unemployment website go down under Governor Ron DeSantis. You can blame that on Rick Scott, whatever. But for crying out loud, the deadline up to registering on October the 5th to vote for the November election, that website went down. And I get it because everybody was crashing it. Here's the latest on this. This is Eric Shawn from Fox News.
In Florida, echoes of the 2000 presidential debacle. The state's online voter registration system crashed just before the 7 p.m. deadline for Floridians to sign up to vote in the November election. Officials say the crush of more than 1 million people an hour who tried to access the site was too much. Now back up and running, the registration deadline was extended by 24 hours.
All right, let me stop right there. So the Democrats, I mean, okay, hey, Obamacare crashed. Okay, maybe they weren't expecting this, and I don't know why people are waiting at the last minute, number one. But okay, the website crashed. The governor said, hey, we have an overload. Okay, to me, that's acceptable. Having said that, the Democrats have been out all week, Jamie, going, see, this is planned voter suppression going on. How in the world how do you know who's the Republican or Democrat and have voter suppression?
How in the world were 5% of Floridians on one website all at the same time? I mean, that's ridiculous to say that 1 million people were trying to use one website in the state of Florida at the same time. I mean, tell me if my math is wrong. 22 million or so people who are not even eligible to vote in Florida, the population of Florida. 22 million. So to say that 1 million people are trying to register and use a state website at one time seems ridiculous to me.
You know where all this is going, Jamie, before we go to Claire here, you know where all this is going? This is all going to full vote by mail. This is all going to go to let's have same day registry, and then you should be able to vote that weekend without getting your background checked. We're going down this road.
I got a great idea.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why don't we pick a day and let's all vote on that day? Like we have
April 15th. So Claire, let me ask you this. Come on. How is, okay, it's embarrassing to the governor. I get it. How is this voter suppression? Come on.
I mean, it might not be voter suppression, but it surely could be incompetence. That website should work. It should work no matter how many people are using it, right? Although, you got to be honest, like 1 million people an hour using the website on the deadline? Like, I get procrastination, folks, but come on.
Okay, let me go to another clip. I'm going to start with you. The new NBC Wall Street Journal poll that's come out, and some of the other numbers show Biden up by 12, and it's Biden up by, nationwide, I get it, Biden up by 14, Biden up by 16. But even MSNBC, Steve Kornacki, was on with Shepard Smith from CNBC. Smith asked the question. I want to play the clip, and I'm going to start with you, Claire. Shepard Smith asked the question, hey, is there any movement? Is this bad news for President Trump? And Kornacki brought up, hey, listen, let's go back. Hillary Clinton was at this time up by double-digit points as well.
Numbers are not in the president's favor right this moment, but give us some context. And is there precedent for coming back from these sorts of deficits at this period?
Yeah, make no mistake, these are the worst numbers since we've been seeing for Donald Trump. But it was around this time 4 years ago when we were saying the same thing, and I do think this is worth keeping in mind. What you're looking at right here, this is our October 13th, 2016 NBC Wall Street Journal poll, and there it was, Hillary Clinton over 50% ahead of Trump by 10 points nationally. Actually, the Biden leads a little bit more in our poll right now, but the point is, less than a month before the election, double-digit deficit. Trump did recover and win from that. There certainly is precedent for him making big strides in the final weeks amidst controversy.
Is it already a win? Is it done for Trump, or the Trump crowd reminding those on the left, hey, we saw this 4 years ago and you saw what happened?
I mean, nothing is certain at this point if 2016 showed us anything. I mean, at this point in 2016, we were all anointing Hillary Clinton president, the next president of the United States. At this point, we have no idea what's going to happen. The fact it's going to come down to the wire and all of these battleground states like Florida. I mean, Florida, it's a toss-up. It's anybody's state. I mean, one day you see a poll that says that they're tied. The next day you see the poll that says Biden's up. The next day maybe Trump's up.
Do you think it's a landslide for Biden?
I don't think so. No.
Really?
I really don't think it's a landslide in Florida. It may be a landslide in other states. I think what Biden may be able to do, and this is what something that former President Obama did pretty effectively, was win states that people said were not winnable for a Democrat. He may be able to do that. I mean, Arizona's a good example.
Well, I don't know, Jamie, I don't know if he's going to win South Carolina or Texas, but when you hear these numbers, when they go back, listen, Jamie, let me just tell you, when I see new record numbers coming back in from new voters and the Democrats outpacing the Republicans, those are the days I saw of 2008. The electorate was energized about Barack Obama. That does not, I don't think these numbers bode well for Trump.
No, there's no question the president has had not a bad week, but a horrific week. And so I do think the one thing that we took from that clip is that Joe Biden is probably doing a point or two better than Hillary was at this point in the campaign. That, the 10 or 12 point lead, I do not believe exists. It may exist if you're doing a nationwide poll, but you start looking at the states that matter, and I think you're looking at still a very, very close race in Florida, Pennsylvania.
What's making it close, Jamie?
Well, the question, what's making it close is I believe there's some non-traditional Republican voters out there who are probably going to vote for Trump because for the first time in their lives, they've felt that there's economic success on their side. When you look at African-American voters or African-American workers, Hispanic workers, people have started seeing this. There's this great quote from Biden during the debate. He's like, wow, our suburbs are more segregated than they've ever been. That's fantastic. Do you know what that means? More and more people of color are reaching the level of success that they can move to the suburbs and out of the inner city.
So Jamie thinks it's by a point or two. You would agree? Same within the margin there?
I think it's going to be a close race in a lot of states. I don't think it's going to be a close race nationally, but there's a lot of election to be had yet.
I want to talk about another issue. I want to start off. This is a very contentious issue. The Supreme Court has now 4-4. I think ACB, Amy Coney Barrett's she's gonna get in. Having said this,
you're just desperate to give her the RBG.
Well, if something's gonna happen, that's right. So anyway, I sound like the Democrats with the election because it's a done deal. Anyway, this is where I'm getting at. This is a big issue. We talked about this before. I'm gonna start with you before I go to Jamie. I want to play some clips. Mike Bloomberg's in town. LeBron James. Hey, we want to pay off those. This is some great clips I want to play for the audience out there. This is about ex-felons getting their right to vote. They're saying, it's a poll tax and all this other stuff. Here is, let me see if I've got this clip ready to go here.
The question.
That's Jeff Brandes. I'll get to that. Here is Leslie.
How much?
Here's Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes here. I wanted to play this clip. This is about the ex-felons and having the right to vote here.
After a reported 12,600 felons registered, mostly as Democrats, Florida's Republican legislature passed a law to clarify the amendment. Says it defines all terms of sentence as more than just time served, parole and probation. It also means that felons have to pay their financial penalties. And so, out of nearly 1.5 million felons who regained the right to vote, 774,000 lost the right because of debt. Early on, advocates of the amendment also said that financial obligations are part of the sentence because Florida lets felons pay their debts long after their probation and parole are over. But the new law says so long as that debt is still owed, felons can't vote.
Okay, so Desmond Meade with the Restoration Coalition for the ex-felons able to vote, he says this is a poll tax. The overwhelming majority, 75+% supported it. Do you think they honestly knew what they were voting in favor of? And by the way, you're a lawyer. Can't you say that the terms of your condition is to pay back all the fines, fees, and restitution?
I don't think the voters knew what they were voting for in terms of fines, fees, and restitution. I do know, like everybody has said, when they argued this ballot initiative in front of the Florida Supreme Court, they conceded that it was going to include repayment of fines, fees, and restitution. Here's the problem. Nobody realized when they were doing that just how significant the number of fines, fees, and restitution aside. Let's just talk about fines and fees because everybody's like, you should pay back whatever you've done. But fines and fees in Florida is a huge business. We have what's called cash register justice. Our court system is funded by the fines fines and fees, and we just nickel and dime people to death. And some of this stuff doesn't make any sense. I mean, you're going to have a $100,000, $150,000 fine for trafficking cocaine, fair enough. But if you rape a child, that's a $10,000 fine. You explain that to me.
Jamie, let me play more of the clips right here.
The question.
This is State Senator Jeff Brandes, who is the sponsor of the bill that says that, hey, you passed an amendment. We've got to clarify what the amendment is all about.
The question in Florida is, are you a felon? And if you are a felon, have you completed all terms of your sentence? Part of that sentence included fines, fees, and restitution. All we've said is they must complete all terms of their sentence, which is exactly what the voters voted for.
So, Jamie, the Leslie Stahl piece was they found out there were more Democrats registering to vote, and somehow this has become a big political issue, and I'm sure there's politics involved, so let's put a stop to it.
Well, Democrats have been great at putting ballot amendments on the ballot to generate turnout. That was certainly that year's version of it. This year is Amendment 2 to raise the $15 minimum wage. And they use these tricks to try to increase the number of people who will vote for Democrat candidates up and down the ballot. So there's no question that legally people have to pay their fines, fees, and restitutions. That was argued before the state Supreme Court. It was reported on. Nobody campaigned on it, but still they use this broad language in the ballot amendment to try to justify that it did not include it or it did, but legally they have to pay it. And we can make arguments about the case of rape versus cocaine and how much that should be, but I think that's completely off topic, quite frankly.
I mean, how is it off topic? Because these are the reasons why people can't vote. And the fact that the system is completely inconsistent and people don't even know how much they owe. There are some cases of men who had 3 different amounts reported with 3 different agencies for the same debt. There's counties where there are $500 million of outstanding debt. They don't even know all the people. They don't know how much they owe. And if you can't figure out how much you have to pay,
but I'm going to get to
that. Is that right?
Go ahead, Jamie.
They owe something.
But
they know they owe something. So.
Right, but Claire, here's this is what I'm getting at.
Sometimes they don't know they owe something.
The fines and fees were set before these guys were even convicted. So how is it like, it's done purposely? We're going to set the fines and fees and restitutions up because they may happen to be of a certain color, and this is what I hear from the fines and fees, as you point out, cash register justice.
Right, and it is nickel-and diming people to death.
Okay.
I mean, you look at a $1,000 fine, it can have up to 30% of additional little fees, including like 15 cents for that, 50 cents for that. It's insane.
Here is
Leslie
Stahl asking, is it Desmond Meade?
Desmond Meade,
who, by the way, it's a success story, I agree. It was
but they wouldn't let him restore his right so he could become a member of the Florida bar. So I would argue that he's still held back.
He's a success story.
He is.
That's what he is. That's what I'm saying. But listen to what the average, you're going to like this one, Jamie. Listen to what the average fine is at what is owed. Here's the clip.
How much does the average ex-felon owe in terms of money?
From what we've seen in our efforts, the majority of folks anywhere in the neighborhood of around $1,500.
And can most of these ex-felons afford that?
I would say that they couldn't.
Isn't it unconstitutional to make someone pay to vote?
The 24th Amendment, I believe, made that unconstitutional.
Well,
one's
separate from the other.
Unfortunately.
But hold on, Jamie, come on, $1,500. And by the way, I am all for cutting a deal. If the judge thinks you're doing what you promised, these guys can cut back certain things. There is a middle ground here. This isn't just a one size fits all.
I agree. I mean, I can buy into all types of criminal justice reform. We send people, there's probably, the last time I checked, which was a couple of years ago, Ed, but we have more than 3,000 people who are still in prison today for minor marijuana offenses, costing our government $20-30 million a year. Florida government. And so if we want to talk about all of these things, let's have a conversation about that.
Yeah, this is not a poll tax, Jamie.
The conversation about voting and ex-felons voting is a completely different conversation. They have to pay the fees. The conversation of what those fees are, what they should be, and how somebody should be able to more easily integrate into
right.
society
Hey,
is something that we should have a conversation about, but it has nothing to do with today's
And
conversation.
by the way, the bigger amounts what's old isn't from black people. I bet you it's all among white people, because white people with fraud and banking, like Bernie Madoff, I'm just telling
the drug trafficking charges are
some of the, but when it's average of 15, but when you've got fraud and
the highest,
business fraud, we see more of those in the white community. So my question is, how has this become a poll tax, and why is it only singularly targeted those against black people?
I mean, specifically because it's an amount of money you have to pay in order to vote. The reason why we talk about its disproportionate impact on black people is because it has a disproportionate impact on black people, like the entire criminal justice system. That's just a fact. And I challenge you to sit across the table from someone who's been in prison for decades, look them in the eye as tears are running down their face talking about the $1,500 fine when they can't even get a job mopping the floor, and say they're just trying to put me back in prison.
I think, Jamie, first off, I think that's a little lax. I think they can get jobs.
I've done it.
What, you were in jail serving felonies?
I have sat across the table from someone in that position, and it will
doesn't represent
your heart
everybody,
out.
but I'm sure. But you can always get help. Trust me. Now, having said that, Jamie, to sit back and use this as a race issue and a poll tax, hey, listen, you commit the crime. How does this become a race issue?
It's just, when it comes to voting, you have to pay your fees. Anything else, the dog just doesn't hunt. I mean, that dog don't hunt.
Yeah, they're making this a race issue. We're going to go back to Jim Crow.
Do y'all realize this has only been going on in Florida since 2004? This is not something we've been doing forever. It's something we switched to because we lost our appetite for just taxing the people in order to pay for the court system.
Jamie, another conspiracy. I did not know that one.
I didn't either. So
here's one more from Desmond Meade.
I'm going to read you what you said at the time. When I went in there to vote, I didn't just take my family in there with me. I brought all of my ancestors that were hung on trees, that were burned, that was bitten by dogs, that was sprayed by fire hoses. I brought their spirit with me in there.
Our people went through that. We've been constantly fighting. Amendment 4 was nothing but a continuation of the civil rights fights.
If you want to fight for the rights that's been rejected, I get history. I'm with you on that. But when you commit a crime, and then because of your fault, and you're trying to make a betterment for your life, you got to go through the rules, and to sit back and say, well, the rules were already there before, as you said in 2004, fines were already there. To sit back and make this a race issue, I'm just saying it doesn't sell.
Isn't prison punishment enough?
Well, who looks out for the person that got punished itself before they went to prison?
I mean, the person that you wronged.
Is the government giving them money?
If you're talking about restitution, that's one thing. But we're talking about people who are paying for the medical care that they receive in prison, as well as these ridiculously arbitrary fines that go to all kinds of stuff. If you get a BUI, you spend a fine that goes to the spinal cord and brain rehabilitation thing. Some of the stuff has nothing to do with the court system, which Senator Jeff Brandes has said himself.
Put away fines and fees. Would you support restitution?
Of course. I think we could all agree that restitution's fair.
Okay. So, Jamie, why don't we just do that, then have the restitution? Is that can be considered another poll tax?
Well, from the argument that's being made, any type of payment would be a poll tax. So wouldn't the actual prison sentence also be a poll tax? Why don't we let prisoners go ahead and vote while they're in prison?
Well, Bernie Sanders wants that. Hey,
Vermont does, I believe.
Vermont does.
There's
Claire
a state
does all
that
of
does.
this, man. Oh, man.
I'm sure that's not. I don't think very many people in Florida want to emulate much that's going on in Vermont. All
right, listen. This has been I'm fascinated by this topic. And it really does.
It's an interesting one.
It's a very interesting topic. So Jamie Miller, who is the state director of the big marketing firm peoplewhothink.com, and Claire Goforth, the political reporter of the daily.com, and also you can hear on NPR Radio. So anyway, thanks so much for joining us for another edition of Florida Daily TV, brought to you by FloridaDaily.com.